tired, and it's been a great evening. And I think with the red group, one thing was a really deep listening to different perspectives, and you know, I would like to underline that because one of the strong comments was the need to continue to have discourse, to have dialogue, to have different perspectives, and to really hear those community voices. And in some political decisions, a lot of people are feeling, I think, that the voice of the local community isn't necessarily strong. So I should have said my name is Jill Lightwood and Joan Sinclair from the Institute of Island Studies. So we're going to co-present. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to try and give a bit of an overview, and then we're going to try to find some examples. So that was one point, the ongoing dialogue. Certainly, we heard again and again and again and again that the heart of change is at the local level. But we acknowledge that that word community means different things to different people. So, for example, the community of people living without food security have a different view of the world than those of us that do. So very much needing to talk more about that. But that sense of the local community right at the local level, and I was very fortunate because I had a young man sitting next to me that's from my neighborhood, and you know, that was nice. One thing we talked about, that tension between decisions and that power at the local level, community level, the importance of that people have control to some degree over their lives, and yet at the same time the need for government at different levels, perhaps regulation. One example was pesticide use. And so that was, I think, a kind of a thread of the conversation about the need to have appropriate decisions made at the local level. If decisions are made at a higher level and imposed on local community, you know, that's not good. But sometimes we need those bigger, more comprehensive solutions. We had quite a chat about overcoming resistance to change, and that's a good example of a reminder in our group to question assumptions. So while that question is compelling and there were ideas about that, it was also, let's not just assume that everybody's resistant to change, because look at what's happened the last few decades, a lot of change, and a lot of people embracing change. So, and a very strong, the whole issue of land use in many different ways, and Joan will speak to a couple of those points. Really, the other group mentioned it, but a very strong feeling by a lot of people in the group that we are not willing to let traditional industries just decline or accept that they're somehow not relevant anymore. A real desire for more focus on those traditional industries. And again, I think our group was somewhat reflective, and I think overall the sense was we do need to have critical thinking about all these things. So I'm going to, I know we don't have long, but if Joan's looking at her points to see if we can bring some of those points alive.
There's some, I think, really strong points that were made about stewardship, land stewardship. We referred to that time and time again. One of the people in our group talked about an idea that I think is worth everybody thinking about. If some of you may not remember, but a lot of us here probably would know what the Land Development Corporation was, and how that they took, and correct me if I'm wrong in this, but they took farmland that wanted to be taken out of production and allowed that to be sold, or to change hands and be sold to larger, eventually almost corporate farming. To consider at this stage of the game, or at this part, at this time in the island's history, to reverse that, to think about that process, but think about it the other way, that we take the land that this was simply an idea put forward that we take the land that is now not wanted, not as much of it wanted, and free it up, break it up into smaller parcels and make it available to entrepreneurs if they wish to use it for a particular use, for instance. So there's an idea that, you know, is kind of something to think about. What's the red light mean?
That means we have to stop. I don't think it's for the red light. Yay! It's not a red time.
No, I think that summarizes the critical ones around land use.
Well, and perhaps just to say in conclusion, there was a sense that we can look back and look around and see what's worked and build on what's working. There's a lot of good things, but also to really challenge our thinking, to not just accept what we're told necessarily, really question it in dialogue. So thank you very much.